to talk you through this reharmonisation of O Christmas Tree. A lot of the techniques that I've used in this I've covered in other videos, things like chord substitutions, flat and fifth substitutions, block chords, drop two voicings, inner movement, dominant pedals, all that kind of thing. And I've put links for that below. I hope you find it useful, and if you do, remember, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you. So let's look at a really basic lead sheet now for O Christmas Tree, just using tonic and dominant chords, in this case G and D. Sounds like this. Okay, so the first substitution that I've used is on the second bar where I've put E minor 7 instead of G. Now this is a really common chord substitution. G in the key of G major obviously is chord 1, E minor is chord 6, and you see that they have two notes in common, G and B. So becomes. The other thing I did there was use a real cliche. It's called inner movement on the minor 7, just going from the minor 7th D up to the major 7th. So, and then up to the root. Okay. Now, to precede that E minor 7, I've put an F sharp dominant 7th, F sharp diminished 7th chord in. And remember, that functions exactly the same as a D7 with a flattened 9. That's D7, that's the flattened 9. And D7 going to E minor is what they call an interrupted or deceptive cadence. It's chord 5 going to chord 6, very commonly used. So you can use F sharp diminished 7 in place of D7, and that creates a nice little bit of downward movement in the bass. Added to that at the beginning, instead of going straight to G with G in the root, I played that voicing. I put the 9th at the bottom, going down to the root. So we've now got this movement in the bass, which is nice. It's like the mainly contramotion bass with the melody there. Okay. So the next thing I've done is I've used some drop two voicings in the next bar. I've used these chords F sharp half diminished 7th, which is that chord. Now if you played that as a block chord voicing, it would be like that. You'd have the melody note, the same note down in the bass, the remaining chord notes in between with the right hand. With a drop two voicing, you look at the right hand voicing and you take the next to the top note out and put it down there. And then on the G sharp diminished chord, instead of playing it like that, once again, look at the right hand, take that one out, put it down there. Same thing on the A minor 7. So the diminished chord, remember, again, that one, G sharp diminished, functions exactly the same as E7 with a flat 9th, which takes you nicely to A minor 7, which then takes you very nicely to D7, and again with a flattened 9th. It just adds that bit of colour to it. Remember that any dominant 7th chord can be preceded by chord 2 from that key. So in this case, A minor 7. Okay, now when I get back to the tonic, instead of going straight onto a G chord, this is often used in jazz standards to play a diminished 7th chord on G and then G. And I've just put the 9th in on the G there. You may be wondering about the A with the diminished 7 because it's not part of the chord. It's actually part of the diminished scale, and it's a kind of tension note which resolves very nicely onto the G. Okay, now we're heading to G again on the next bar. We could have just put a dominant 7th in there, but instead I've put a flattened 5th substitute. A flat 7 is the flattened 5th substitute of D7, and the D in the melody makes that a sharpened 11th or flattened 5th chord, which gives it nice colour. Remember, the reason why an A flat 7 works as a substitute for D7 is because it contains these two notes, C, G flat. If we think of that as F sharp, those same two notes are in the D7 chord. And it's this unstable interval that has a feeling of wanting to resolve. It's like tension, resolution. So because the A flat 7 contains those same two notes, we can use it to go to G. Okay. So in the next couple of bars, I've used basically the same as the first time round. I've put the 9th in again there in the right hand though. And then just there, I've put the major 7th in next to the root, just to create that nice bit of colour. F sharp diminished 7th again. Now this time at the end of the bar, I've changed E minor 7 to E7, and with D in the bass. That's because although I'm going to use the same chord progression in the next bar, I'm going to put a different bass line in. I'm going down to F sharp half diminished with C in the bass, and then I'm putting the diminished chord on B in the bass, so it's the same chord with a different bass note, going down to A minor 7, and then back once again to D7 with the flattened 9th. And then again I've put the diminished chord on the G. And when it resolves, I'm just adding the 9th with my left hand thumb. Okay, now the next 3 bars, I'm using what we call a dominant pedal. That means I'm just keeping the dominant note, D, down in the bass. And in the right hand, I'm just playing various different kind of triads. So, that's a G triad over the D bass, which actually, when you think about it, G is the 11, so it's like a suspended chord. And then we've got an E chord. Now that works really well. It's like an upper structure triad, but with only the D in the bass rather than, usually with an upper structure triad, you'd have the 3rd and the 7th like that. And it gives you a really colourful chord. But it works all right as a triad as well. And then that's an A minor triad. Now these two add a real lot of colour there. B flat going to A flat, and once again they are very commonly used upper structure triads on a D7 chord. You've got the upper structure triad B flat major, which is built on the flattened 6th degree of D7, and then the A flat on the flattened 5th. And then you go back to a C triad, which again has that feeling of a D suspended chord. And then we've got this E flat diminished 7th chord. Now, again, if you think about D7 with a flattened 9th, E flat diminished 7th rather, just functions just like a D7 with a flattened 9th. And then here we're going here, once again, I'm playing a diminished seventh chord over the tonic, but it's not a G diminished seventh this time. It's the E flat diminished seventh, and it's a kind of suspension, and all the notes then resolve. Okay, so on to the last bit now. Now just here, B flat 7 going to C major 7. So I'm taking a bit of a diversion there basically. Instead of going back to the tonic, I'm going back to the subdominant, C major 7. Now, why have I come up with that? Well, you could have done this. You could have gone and then changed it to G7, which would have gone nicely to C major 7. But I just thought you can approach a dominant, a tonic from a whole tone below. And then there's the inner movement in the C major 7 chord. You've got the 9th, the major 7th going to the root, and the 6th. And just here I've put an F7. Now I've got an upper structure triad there, a D major triad, which is on the 6th note of F7. You could just, if you find that a little bit harsh, you might prefer to just play, say, a 9th and an F9 chord. And then that takes you to E11, which resolves to E7 with a flat 9th. So there you've got the 11th going down a semitone to the 3rd, the 9th going to the flat 9, and then to the root. Okay, and then I've just used the same as we did at the beginning. Oops. Sorry, I'll do that again. Now, right at the end I've used, we can call this an interrupted cadence or a deceptive cadence, and it's a commonly used one. I've gone to a major 7th chord on E flat major 7, that's down a major 3rd from G, and then A flat major 7, which takes you to a semitone above G and finishing on G. And the melody note at the end, remember, goes. So if we do the same thing over the E flat major 7, we've got the sharpened 11th there, which gives it a nice Lydian feel. And then I'm doing exactly the same thing, but in the middle of the A flat major 7 chord. So once again, the sharpened 11th going down to the 3rd, and then finishing with this G chord with the added 9th. Hope you found that useful. See you in the next video.